Welcome back to On the Light. In this episode, I have a lively conversation with Tori Milner from the Iyengar Institute of New York. Tori shares about her introduction to Iyengar Yoga, from her early influences at home to discovering Unity Woods Yoga Center and learning from John Schumacher and Mary Dunn. She also shares some significant experiences while studying in Pune with the Iyengar family. Additionally, Tori gives us a look ahead to the 2026 convention with Abhijata Iyengar, aimed at bringing together our large community to experience Iyengar Yoga with the theme Cultivating Freedom. Please enjoy this episode of On the Light. How are you?
So nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too.
Thanks for inviting me.
Definitely. I'm excited for this conversation. The first thing I want to ask you, Tori, is what was your initial introduction to Iyengar Yoga?
My mom had a lot of books on the shelf. She had like Richard Hittleman's 30-day yoga program, and she had some other books that I just would take off the shelf occasionally. And when I was in my mid-teens, just do what I could and tried to replicate what I was seeing. I wasn't really reading the instructions. I was just looking at the pictures and trying to do that.
Uh-huh.
And so that I guess you could say was my first introduction to yoga, the existence or the fact of yoga.
Sure.
But that, that was just a kind of a fun, frivolous thing that I tried every once in a while. And then when I was 24, I had a good friend whose mother was an artist and whose brother's kids were having a birthday party. And so she invited me to come over to this family party, and there were a lot of adults and kids. And I knew her mother. She was unlike anyone I had ever met before. She was a very bohemian, artsy, scattered, funky person. I really had never met anybody like her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a what we might call a real character.
Yeah.
During this kids' party, she just interlaced her hands and went into the headstand and did all these things while she was in the headstand. So she went up in a headstand and she stood in the headstand for a while. And then she started doing all these things with her legs, which I now know is the Shirshasana cycle.
Right.
But at that point in time, I was just shocked and mesmerized by this display, this performance, really. And she was doing it to entertain the kids, but it was also very entertaining for me. And I don't know, maybe the other adults knew her better and were used to her doing things like this. But I was just so struck by the reality of this person who I saw as such a mercurial personality and such a kind of a scatterbrained person doing this very stable and elegant practice.
Yeah.
And so my friend told me, oh yeah, my mom does yoga and this is where she does it. And she's been doing it for like 20 years. And she even designs their t-shirts. And so I found out what was the name of this place, and it happened to be Unity Woods Yoga Center in the DC area. And I lived in Virginia at the time, Northern Virginia. So it was really convenient. And I started just like anybody, just with I think it was a 6-week beginner series. And then I started taking classes once a week. I worked full time at a job in an office as an account executive for a graphic design firm. So I
Oh.
was the liaison between the artists, the graphic artists, and the clients. And so yoga it just slowly started seeping into my mid 20s office life. And then I
Hmm.
was taking 2 classes a week, and then I started taking 3, and then I started doing 4 classes a week, and then I started going to John's classes. And then I found out I was moving to New York. And so I asked John, who should I study with in New York? And he said, without hesitation, he said, Mary Dunn. And then he
Hmm.
said, Kevin Gardner. And then he mentioned another woman named Robin Janis. And so those were the 3 people I looked up when I came to New York in
Okay.
1999.
Wow.
So I started in 1996 with Iyengar Yoga.
Okay.
Just to give you context of what
Mhm.
time, what's the time frame. And
Yeah.
yeah, so mid 90s.
And so you were in your late 20s then?
I'm
Or mid?
I was in my mid 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's pretty young for
Yeah. And
younger.
it, Unity Woods Yoga Center, Iyengar Yoga wasn't in the name. John wasn't promoting that it was Iyengar Yoga. He was teaching Iyengar Yoga. It was all Iyengar Yoga, but it wasn't, you know, explicit like that.
Yeah.
And so then I realized, oh, this is a kind of yoga. This is Iyengar Yoga, which made me realize there were other kinds of yogas, which I dabbled in or tried a class here or there. But for me, I just feel so lucky that my first introduction to yoga was Iyengar Yoga. And that for me, to me, it just worked. It just worked right from the beginning. I liked the organization and the methodology and the way that I found myself after class was always in a better situation than before class. And
Hmm.
so I thought this thing really works.
Hmm.
And it works on many levels. And I guess I recognized that as a beginner. I just felt better after class, even if I thought the class was hard, or even if I felt like I didn't like all the poses that we did in the class, or, there were things that were difficult. No matter what, I felt better after class. And that was just something that I really was like the carrot on the stick for me. So I think I told my teacher at Unity Woods, probably after like 2.5 years. His name is Joe Edlesick. And I said to Joe, I was studying with Joe and John,
Hmm.
I think I want to teach this. And he was like, oh, you need to wait a long time before you teach this. And you can't just hang out a shingle and call yourself a yoga teacher. And he was, I don't want to say discouraging, but he was helping me understand that it wasn't going to be a quick thing. And
Hmm.
I wasn't talking about it being a quick thing. It was just like, this
Right.
is so powerful to me. I think I want to share this with other people.
Yeah.
So then when I moved to New York and met Mary and the other teachers in New York, and was going to 4 classes a week with teachers in New York.
Hmm.
And by the way, New York, it was just like level 3 in Washington, D.C. was not the level 3 that I walked into in New York. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know my hands could go that direction in a handstand.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Like they were working on poses there that I hadn't been exposed to yet.
Hmm.
And I really took off, I guess, in my practice there. And then I took the teacher training in New York from 2001 to 2003 with James Murphy and a woman named Anna Golfinopoulos, because Mary Dunn was taking a little hiatus from the teacher training, but she was dropping in occasionally. And our first day of teacher training was September 11th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't meet that day.
Yeah.
And it was a very profound moment in my life, because I just felt like the world needs more yoga. The world needs more unity, more connection. And it felt like a real underscore of that.
Yeah. I have to say, I remember that day, and I had just gotten my boyfriend at the time to take yoga class with me. So we were signed up. I was so excited. We're gonna go to class. And that was like the second week of class. It was September 11th. And I really wanted to still go to class. I really I needed that sort of grounding. But he was like, he didn't quite understand what it could do for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that day really well. And I remember in the week that followed that, Mary leading us through in class. There had been some sequences, I think, that the Iyengars had done for traumatic events that had happened in India. And she was leading us through those kinds of practices for a while. There had been nothing like that
Yeah.
until then, and they're on in our backyard.
Yeah.
And it was just a really profound way to begin that embark on becoming a teacher,
Mhm.
and realizing how much responsibility it really carries.
Yeah, that's right. So when did you start traveling to Pune to study?
I started my first trip to Pune was 2004, and I had spoken to Mary about it, and she had recommended that the best time for a new trip to Pune, the first trip to Pune, was June,
Mhm.
because that's when they're restarting their cycle. And so, and she said, if you can go for 2 months, don't just go for 1 month. You're going so far. It's gonna be so much better to immerse yourself for 2 months, because then you'll get to see how they treat, the arc of their teaching from 1 month to the next.
Mhm.
And that was her advice. And so that's what I did. So I
Mhm.
went to Pune in 2004 for the first time for June and July.
Okay.
And then I went again in 2006 for 2 months, and again in 2008 for 2 months. And then my life shifted a little bit so that I could only go for 1 month in
Mhm.
2011 and 12. And then I had my twins. So then I
Oh,
had twins, and I took a little break from going to Pune when they were very young.
mhm.
Uh, and then in 2015, I started going for all the Anushasanams, because I
Okay.
couldn't go for a whole month.
Mhm.
Um, and then, so far I've been to Pune 11 times.
Okay. That's a significant amount.
I love going to Pune. I think it's not just Pune, it's India. It's like getting completely, although it's becoming much more westernized now than it was then. And for the early teachers, it's beyond,
Yeah.
when
Mhm.
when there were still like cows in the field. So for me, it's just been a real transformation of seeing how westernized Pune has become, just even in that 20 years since 2004.
Mhm.
But I think going back to Pune again and again, certainly allows us to dip our cup into the source of the Iyengar's teaching. At the same time, I think it also gives us this perspective of where we are now compared to where we were the last time we were there.
Mhm.
And it just keeps, as yoga is, keeps being a mirror for our state of being. And in Pune, you never know what kind of month you're going to have or what kind of experience you're going to have, what kind of people you're going to meet. When I first went in 2004, there was a whole group of really kind of raucous Australians there. And this was before they were heavily monitoring like who was coming to help with the medical class. So they were all just like, come on and help in the medical class. So I just went with them and was helping in the medical class in that trip for those 2 months. It was wild, it was just a wild experience to see also Guruji, who wasn't teaching, he was practicing in the hall, but he wasn't teaching so much. And then Gita and Prashant, and you got to just see these different expressions of what is Iyengar Yoga.
Yes.
And I think it's often distilled to like alignment and props and precision, but there's no way to say what Iyengar Yoga is because it's everything. And I think that's what people don't always realize, or we don't always bring that all the way out in our teachings.
One of the hardest questions to answer when a new student comes and says, well, what is Iyengar Yoga? And you're like, well, I can't possibly sum it up in one sentence, but you try and, hope they just keep coming to be able to experience. Yeah.
I think that's it. I think it's our duty to give them an experience of and touch on all the things that it is. People also come in and ask, well, how does this compare to other forms of yoga? And I always say it doesn't, and I can't. So that's your job to compare it.
Yeah.
You go out and you take other forms and take this, and then you decide how it compares. I can't say because I don't know how it will compare for you.
Right. Yeah. That's a good
Because
point.
I think that's a real, it's such a personal experience. Some people are really indebted to the props. And then here we have Light on Yoga where there's only 2 props in that whole book. A couch and a person.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you look at that book and there's nothing in there about props.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just such a vast subject that I think we're so lucky to have and so blessed to have found.
So blessed. Yes, definitely. So can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences with Guruji or Gita or Prashant and all of your journeys learning there?
Yeah. I'll start with Gita because in my generation, we started going to Pune. It was primarily Gita.
Sure.
As a woman, you got more Gita classes. And then I think the men got more Prashant classes. And then we all came together on Mondays and Fridays with Gita. But, Gita's rigor, her simplicity and her rigor are just unparalleled, I think. I mean, that's what I was so struck by first taking classes with her in Pune was just the simplicity of her instructions, but the depth to which she took you because of the rigor and because of the repetition. Just relentless, just and someone had told me, I don't know who this was, but that Gita gave out individual sequences. Like after she kind of saw you and she would give you a sequence. I don't know I cannot recall who or how this came to be. So when I went to Pune that first time, I took a letter with me for Gita because I had developed some kind of neck issue. and I was having trouble with my inversions. And I thought maybe she would give me a sequence. So I get to Pune and it's packed with all kinds of people from all over the world. And, it's maybe like a week in or so by the time I got the courage up to give her the letter.
Yeah.
And it was in a practice, and she was in Upavista Konasana. She had a small halasana bench in front of herself, and she was elevating her chest, and she was pressing down her legs, and she was clearly practicing. But she was also looking around. I mean, she wasn't undisturbable. It didn't look like to me. So I came over and I came down kind of in a child's pose, and I slid her the letter while my head was down, because I think I was so afraid to look in her eyes. I mean, her eyes just felt like she was seeing everything. When I came back up and I saw her eyes looking at me, she looked very serious. And I just said, thank you. I didn't explain anything. I didn't ask her to read the letter. I just pushed her the paper, and I came up and I saw that look on her face, and I just said, thank you. And I left. And I just thought, I don't think I'm gonna get a sequence. But one night I don't remember which class it was. I think it was the Friday, maybe it was one of the either Monday night or Friday night class, which is one of the ones where everybody came together. And she was teaching, I believe it was back bends, but it was the part of the class where we were working on Shirshasana. And she had us go up and down many times. And then she started talking about when you have neck problems. And she was explaining the action in the shoulder blades and the legs, and where the awareness was needed and where the actions were needed. And I really felt like, even if she wasn't addressing my letter personally, it addressed my letter.
Yes.
Through the teaching, and I just thought, okay, she's not, she's not going to know my name, but she's understanding me.
Yes.
So that was one experience with Gita. Another time in one of the later trips, the hall was packed, and she looked right at me and said, the imbalance comes from your right shoulder blade. And I just kind of looked behind me like, is she talking to me? Because it feels like she's talking to me. And then she really was talking to me. And I'm still, exploring how to get that right shoulder blade to engage. And she saw it in an instant, and it's taking me, decades to work it out. With Prashant, I think, I took to his teaching right away. I love Prashant's teaching. He's very approachable. In one of my trips, I just started asking him if I could talk to him after class, and have had many little meetings with him while I've been in Pune to ask him to expand on certain things he says or ideas. And I just find his manner so approachable and humble, so endearing.
Not everybody, myself included, would feel like they could go talk to him and ask him, but boy, once you do, and he's so generous and willing to share, and you just feel like you've been given the greatest gift.
There was an Israeli woman there who was having these regular meetings with him in one of my trips. And she was the one who encouraged me. She just was like, oh, just go up to him and ask him, like make an appointment and make a time and talk to him. So I did. I think that's part of how this process works. we look to those ahead of us on the path,
Mhm.
and they just open these doors for us. Oh, just try this, or
Right.
go
Yeah.
ask that, you know? And even
Mhm.
one of my last trips when Gita was alive, I went in the house and spoke to her, had a little conversation with her in their house.
Mhm.
So that was very special. And with Guruji, he came through New York in 2005, and we did a whole big production. You recently spoke to James.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure he mentioned
He
this,
did.
yeah, the Light on Life
Mhm.
performance that we did at City Center. I was one of the people involved in that, and I remember it was in 2012, and it was October 2012. I was in the hall practicing, and I was gonna work on dropbacks, and I put the rope around my sacrum and I started working on dropbacks. And it's kind of like right in the line of Guruji's eye. And then
Mhm.
Raya came over to me and said, he wants you to come over. He remembers you from Light on Life.
Uh-huh.
And I looked at Raya and I was like, I think he has me confused with somebody else, like somebody more capable who was in that. Also, I was in that performance, but I
Yeah.
I don't think I think he thinks I'm somebody else. This was kind of my thing. And he's like, no, no, no. He knows it's you. And he wants you to come over. So, so I went over and he just started putting me through my paces with the back bends really strongly, working on all kinds of back bends just
Mhm.
for like 2 hours. It was very intense. A lot of the friends I had made through the month were watching, and one of my friends at the end, she was like, we could all see that you could do it. And I was just like, oh my God, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. That was just it really was like being right next to the fire,
Yeah.
and the demanding nature of Guruji. And so then the next day when I went to practice, and he was sitting up, and I went to thank him for his guidance.
Mhm.
And he said to me, "So did you catch?" And I said, I think so. I think so. To the best of my ability, I caught. And he said, "So now you have to teach like that." And I was just shocked. I was not expecting him to say that. I was expecting him to say, "Now you have to practice like that." But he said, "So now you have to teach like that."
Mm.
And I just thought, what? Who can teach like that, except for you? But I think what he was getting at is that you really have to, as a teacher, help students
Mm.
reach their full potential. And that was what he was trying to impart, was really, I thought that was a very powerful experience, that was unforgettable, an unforgettable experience. And then I had my kids, and so I didn't see him in person again. That was my last experience directly with Guruji.
Well, that's a pretty special ass experience.
It really was.
Those are great stories. Thank you for sharing them.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the convention, but I also want to first ask you about, Guruji gave you that amazing advice to teach like that. What
Mm.
advice would you give to teachers coming up that will never really have these experiences with Guruji, and or maybe they never had him with Gita? Like, how do we keep his legacy at the forefront?
I think studying in Pune is one of the pieces of advice I would give
Mhm.
people who want to teach, even if it's a hardship, save up for it, make it happen. It, like Mary said to me, if you can go for 2 months, go for 2 months, see this arc.
Mhm.
Because 1 month there might be, fewer Westerners, see how they teach. Another month, they might have a little group in from some specific country. And then you really get to see, especially there, when Prashant is still there and Sunita Ji is still there teaching. These are his direct children. And then, of course, Abhijata, Srinit, Raya, these really, family members and really powerful teachers who studied for decades, Gulnaz, Devki, with the Iyengars. There's nothing like doing that to keep it fresh, even though you might feel like, oh, it's not Guruji, it's not Gita Ji. These are the kind of the icons, but Guruji and Gita Ji are in those people, really, really in those people. And so that would be the number one thing I would say. And then just continuing to evolve and, not stagnating in practice.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think we all hit those walls where we feel like uninspired or that
Yeah.
it's difficult. And I think that's something that when I hit one of those doldrums and I think of the hours, days, months, years of relentless, uninterrupted practice from Guruji and Gita Ji, it just feels like, all right, like let me get back on track. And the other thing I think is important to recognize is the creativity within the framework of Iyengar Yoga, is that there's not just one way. There's
Mhm.
1,000 ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
And nobody has the right answer. I mean, this is what Guruji was always figuring out, another way to do it, next to the wall, on the floor, with a prop, without anything, and for hanging from the ropes, and all these different emphasis. This time emphasize the outer foot, this time emphasize the inner foot. Do it from your liver and pancreas, or do it from, spread your lungs as you go. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many ways to do the same thing so that it stays fresh. I think keeping that freshness alive. And if, going to Pune is out of the question, then I think it is really important to attend guest teachers coming through your area and the conventions.
Mhm. So you've been kind of the head of the planning committee, I think, or one of the heads.
Yeah, so I'm called the chair of the 2026 convention, but as we all know, it takes a village to do these things, and there are a lot of really helpful people involved
Good.
and a lot of support and teachers in the region. So we learned at the end of the 2023 convention that the Greater New York Association region was
Mhm.
chosen to host the next convention. And so I volunteered to be the chair, and I invited some local teachers, including Joan White,
Hmm.
Holly Walk Kastura, and then Kathleen Swanson from the New England region, and many other teachers, Yuval Boehm, several of our board members here in New York, to get involved. And so we're planning a 5-day convention with Abhijata, who
Mhm.
I first met in 2007 when she came through. And I remember Mary Dunn saying at a faculty meeting, "Oh, Abhijata Iyengar is coming into town. She'll be here for a week. She's on her way to the 2007 Las Vegas convention, but we're hosting her here, and anyone's invited to participate in these little outings that we're going to do with her." And so I met her at the Statue of Liberty and Ellis at the
Wow.
little Ellis Island outing that Mary
Yeah.
and James and some other senior teachers were part of. And so I got to meet Abhijata in 2007. It's been so exciting to see her progression
Yes.
from 2007, that meeting where I first met her, and
Yeah.
then seeing her in Las Vegas, then seeing her in Portland at that therapeutics convention, and the evolution, when we thought Gita was going to come in 2016 and then she couldn't come. So Abhi taught in Boca, Florida. It's just been such a joy, really, to see her
She's
evolution.
incredible. She's an incredible teacher.
She is such a brilliant leader
Mhm.
of the method, and she really has such a special perspective, having worked so closely with Guruji, Geeta, and Prashant. And she is so her own person. These four constituents of Guruji, Geeta, Prashant, and herself just
Yes.
come together in this way that's really fantastic and fresh. So she'll be with us in May next year, May 22nd through the 27th in Philadelphia.
I'm all signed up.
I was just going to say, we had a really tremendous response to this initial launch of the registration. We have almost 9 months to go. The room is huge and the sky is the limit. I mean, I'm putting my sights on somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people
Mhm.
is my hope
Yeah.
for
I
us.
think you'll get there for sure.
And Abhi's going to offer these teacher education bonus sessions targeted for CIYTs and aspiring teachers, but that anyone who's a serious student and interested is welcome to attend and observe. And we're doing those in tandem with the general convention so that everyone can be together.
Mhm.
Many times in the past, there's been the teachers do a couple days and then the general convention is the rest of the time, and it's kind of separate. But
Mhm.
we thought this time to try making it continuous and see how that goes.
Mhm.
So we're really excited,
Yeah,
really honored to be putting it on. It's a huge undertaking.
I was just gonna say
I've
that.
never
It
put
is.
on an event, certainly of this scale or of this nature, and so it's a big learning curve as well.
Well, we appreciate you and all of the people who you're working alongside because I know it's huge. We had a convention in Minneapolis and St. Paul
I
was
remember that in
yeah.
2004.
Yeah, exactly. 2004. And that's when, I started Iyengar Yoga in 1997. So I was still a pretty young student in 2004. But wow, did that really open my eyes. And I volunteered, to help out with the convention. And Kristen and Lee had a little group of us working on the sutras so that we could recite them at the convention. And that was like,
That just blew us all away.
yes.
It blew everyone away. That moment at that convention when you all got up and chanted the sutras with Lee and Kristen,
Mhm.
it was amazing. Very inspiring.
Yeah, it was nice to be a part of that. So yeah, so I wasn't at the forefront, so I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I know it's a lot of work, and so
Yeah.
that's much appreciated because the whole thing is such a wonderful experience for all of us to be together. And when Abhijata had that talk that she gave, which for the listeners, if you are not aware of it, I'm pretty sure you can still get to it on the website, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
on the INOS website. I encourage you, like if you're on the fence at all about going to the convention, listeners, you listen to that because I was grumbling about the price and everything, and but after I attended that with Abhijata, I thought, okay, I need to like just figure it out. And you know what I mean? It's so worth it. It's so worth it. And especially if you haven't been to Pune.
Right, or you can't afford to go for a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
month. You can't afford that plane trip or just that
Mhm.
time away from work and family. I
Mhm.
mean, when Pune comes here,
Yeah.
we have to go.
We have to go. And I agree. And
Yeah.
also for those who might be on the fence because of financial reasons, we just learned in our board meeting yesterday that there'll be money available. The regions often have grants. Seek those out because there is.
Yes, there is assistance available, and
Mhm.
we're gonna do our best to ensure that everyone who really wants to go is able to go.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Something to look forward to.
Yes, so much to look forward to. Yeah, as Gita said to me at the end of one of my trips, keep practicing.
Well, thank you, Tori. This has
Yeah,
been so nice. I'm so glad we were able to connect.
me too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of On the Light. Today, I want to close with a simple yet profound quote from Guruji in Light on Life that particularly spoke to me today. He says, "One's spiritual realization lies in none other than how he walks among and interacts with one's fellow beings." That's all for today. Thank you for listening. Namaskar.